All right. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. We use this platform called StreamYard, and I will give them, they keep adding more features that I know nothing about. And more, one of these days, I'm going to have to sit down there. It's like, we can like do an intro video and an outro video and all these kind of things. It's like, I'm going to have to ask my friend how to create those or whatever, because he uses it on his other podcast, and say, how do we do this so that we can spice this program up.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with the weather, because I do 99% of the time, or 95% of the time, because if you've been in the South and up to and through the Carolinas, you got hit hard, really, really hard. And this storm was Hurricane Helene was just devastating. I mean, Asheville, North Carolina. I mean, Chimney Rock, North Carolina. I mean, you have towns that are completely inundated, if not almost seem to be wiped off the map. And I was looking at where is it here? AP. Okay, so AP did a report. I guess it was. Oh no, Spectrum News One. I guess. Okay, I thought it was AP. Oh, I guess I came through the AP, but I got it through another website. So just to give you some idea of how much water came down, they're estimating that more than 40 trillion gallons of rain drenched the Southeast in the last week. Which is incredible. That's enough to fill Dallas Cowboy Stadium, 51,000 times, or Lake Tahoe just once. And if it was concentrated in the state of North Carolina, that much water would 3.5 feet deep, and it's enough to fill more than 60 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So this was a lot of water. I mean, and you're from the South. You've seen a lot of storms in your lifetime when you were living down there. I mean, it's I think it's part and parcel of life. But it seems that we get some severe storms. I think the other thing was that we're up to like 160 deaths, and I think they're not finished. They haven't been able to get quite in there and and get everybody. Still a lot of people missing, and so this is I think they said it was the highest death count we've had since Katrina, or something like that, or second to Katrina, and next to a hurricane from like 1969. So this is a major. This is a big storm. I mean, you don't like to see any lives lost, and there's a lot of tragedy in the news reports that I did see. But what's your take? Coming from a man from Louisiana.
Well, you know what? Fortunately, like I was where we are is about 220 miles, 230 miles inland. That's actually farther inland there than I am here. Here it's about 160 miles to the Atlantic. So you got some storms that had just recently been in the ocean, right? So we had some heavy rains for days and 60-mile-an-hour winds or whatever. So we've had some bad storms there that you had to ride out, that knocked out power, knocked out water, and so forth in Shreveport. But I was not ever on the coast for one. The one time we were on the beach. You mentioned 1969 storm you're talking about is Camille, which people were motorboating, not just rowing boats through Canal Street, New Orleans, but motorboating. So it's got to be pretty deep to get a motor in there, right? It's 5 or 6 feet deep, right? Water in the middle, running through the main streets of downtown New Orleans. That was the one people. I don't know if you remember this. They tried to stand on a balcony of a hotel in Biloxi and have a big party and just party through it and get lashed by rain and not worry about it. And there was like 63 people who decided to do that, and 61 of them did not make it through the storm. So don't mess with these storms. It's not that the air is moving fast; it's that the air is moving things through it fast. And those are the things that end up impaling you, and don't mess with them. As for the storm, Asheville's been wiped out before. Lynchburg has been wiped out, right? Those mountain towns that are at the confluence of rivers, streams, lakes, and so forth. It's a tough situation when this happens because there's nowhere for the water to go. It doesn't really drain, right? The whole point of it is it drains down into the river. So if you're the river, there's no more draining, right? The soil does not hold water, right? So it's got to go. The water's going to move. It's not going to sink in like here when it rains. A lot of the rain just sinks into the ground, right? It becomes groundwater or whatever. So there's a lot of water moving, and since it's at mountain angles, it's moving with force. So everything in its wake has a hard time, right? The roads are wiped out. It'll take them a long time to get their roads back right over there. I think there are 5 highways that go into Asheville, and 4 of them have been destroyed. There's only one that's working, and it's not I-40, which is the main east-west thoroughfare there. It's a beautiful part of the country, but you do live in danger of these kind of things. And what I'm hearing from people down there is that it'll be a long time before anybody has their stuff back consistently working, power and so forth. I guess you saw Elon Musk has opened up some Starlink opportunities for them and try to get some satellite communication so people can form their families and so forth. There are a lot of people in this storm, more so than you usually see in the ones down south, just because the nature, lay of the land, the nature of the geography and so forth, who their families don't know where they are, right? They've not been able, after all this time, even to inform their families where they are. I still see that, people were still looking for my brother and his family, so like those people, they're down in the hollers, of those mountains and so forth. And, it may be a long time before anyone even realizes they're there, let alone reached out to help them.
Yeah, there's so much that happens in these parts of the country. I mean, we see this. I mean, you see things like in Tornado Alley where people are living in mobile home parks, and the tornadoes are just basically taking those things up and carrying them over. But some of these pictures about how things just wind up like all this debris just winds up in what was a lake or a river, and all of these things. As you say, the wind, it'll pick things up and it'll carry you. And yes, you can get hit by it. You can get impaled by it. Sometimes I realize that people get caught off guard, and they, and things like that. There is that invincibility factor that comes with humans, that we it's just human nature, and we'll never, I think, train them otherwise. But the people think, oh, I can drive through this water.
Yeah. I want to ride this out. I want to protect my stuff.
Yeah.
It's like your stuff is replaceable. You are not replaceable.
Yeah, I mean, you will lose stuff, you will lose some memories, but is it is it memories versus your life?
Right.
In a lot of cases, water. I just don't think people understand with water and with wind how powerful forces of nature those are, and what deadly killers they can be. That it's just like, oh, it's just water. It's just like a street. I can take care of this. It's like, no. He's like, you can't. Your car cannot make it through, a foot of water. I mean, it will come into your car and it will come up, and you will drown in your own car if you're not wise enough. Abandon your car or something, get on the roof, do something, get out of there, or you never should have driven there to begin with. And, but it's just people have this weird thing about them that they do that. And there's going to be a lot of beach. I think guess there's some beachfront property that that's lost, and we've seen that go around the country where people are in areas where homes that are worth $500,000 or whatever it is get taken away by the ocean, or in this case destroyed by a storm. The water comes in, and if they're on stilts, stilts go quack, and then down goes the home and things like that. It's a terrible thing that we've seen. And yeah, it's going to take a while. I mean, that's the Starlink thing is great. Once again, Elon riding to the rescue of something that he's got there that he can provide, because there's so many cell phone towers that got knocked out and are not going to be, up and running anytime soon again either. I mean, just so much, physical infrastructure damage that occurred, there. And, I feel for the people that have been in that path. And I think a lot of people, they weren't expecting it. I mean, a friend of mine, former intern of Ames, he's from South Carolina, and he said a friend of his, he barely got out of there. I mean, it's just another whole high school classmate of mine just posted yesterday that she finally got in contact with her son and his fiance, and they're in Asheville, and so they're okay. But it took days for that to happen. And if you're a parent, you're worrying about all of these. You're just after a while, it is really, really rough. And some of those other stories about the factory workers and stuff like that. There's gonna be a lot of finger pointing about evacuation procedures and things like that. But this was an unheard of storm in so many facets. And we got the rain. So I was away last week, and baking in 107, 110 degree temperatures in Arizona, and checking on the weather here a little bit and seeing there was some rain. Now we just had our lawn in the last few weeks reseeded, and never had that done before. And so, but it requires watering the lawn a lot. And, we'd had gone through that kind of a dry spell. My wife was really getting tired of watering the lawn. And then we're like, we go away, and it was like perfect timing. It's like we leave town and it starts to rain, and we come back and the lawn is green. But now I needed to dry out so I can cut it.
I hear you. It may not happen for a while.
Yeah, it's like it's like every day it's like some kind of rain. It's not even a lot of rain necessarily every day, right? It's just like this constant just rain. In the morning when I go to the gym, it's very light, maybe even drizzly, but it's like day after day after day, and I'm like, there's got to be an end in sight to this. But I guess this is all kind of that remnants of just how the hurricane and what's left of it.
We're now in the remnants of 2 hurricanes.
Yeah.
And what happens here, the people don't live here, just to explain what's going on. Like, it's been raining here for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, pretty much every day. I mean, pretty much, like, I can think of one day it didn't rain. It didn't rain Saturday. But I mean, it rains every day. It's good. It's already rained today. It's going to rain more today. It's going to rain tomorrow. And what happens is like, we're close to the edge. And so these storms, they circle around us and they go out over the ocean and get moisture and come back and hit us again. And so there's always some clouds and some rain on our side. And there's always some over getting renourished by the ocean, replenished with moisture by the ocean. And so, one goes away and the other one comes back. And so unless like some kind of high pressure or something, or a big frontal system knocks it out of our way, like we can get in these weather patterns where like there's not a sunny day for a month or more. And we're in one now. Saturday was a nice day, but everything before and after so far has been gray and rainy and drizzly, and
I'm beginning to feel like I live in Washington State or some other place. It just
Seattle and DC have the exact same average rainfall.
Is that right?
Yeah, 39 inches. Shreveport is 48 inches. But Shreveport, they get it all in about 12 storms that are big bad storms. But yeah, we're the same as Seattle, and you can kind of see how we get it, because we get into these periods where it just won't stop.
Yeah. So Lori's used to this weather.
Yeah. So tells me the other night, this is her weather. Cool and rainy.
Please, take it back. I want
your weather is drunk in our yard. You need to come pick it up. Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah, the Shreveport is really dry.
Yeah, it's just this is the weather. It comes and it goes, and you never know. I mean, as a matter of fact, my wife was talking to her sister, because we just came from Arizona where she's at, and she mentioned to her, because they broke another record in the Phoenix area yesterday. I think they hit 113, and so she says normally, August, sometime in September, they'll get some rain, and a little bit to mix into it. She says they haven't seen it. They just haven't seen it, which only exacerbates the problems of Arizona of lack of water.
And the heat itself, it can't cool off.
Right, right. It doesn't do anything. So this trip only reinforced my wife's belief is like, why does anybody live there? I can't live here,
Right. Right.
and all that. But my sister's acclimated, but
Yeah.
it's way too hot. You just have that little bit of time when you can do things. Matter of fact, I had some friends of mine who the guy retired from the military, and their last duty station was up in Washington, and so they retired and they moved to Arizona. And you retire after about 20 years, right? So you got that
Mhm.
one thing going. Then he's a doctor, and so now he's working in a, I don't know, pediatric hospital or something or other in Phoenix area. Uh, but it was the first time they've lived in Arizona during all their years in the military. And his wife was commenting on Facebook, is like, it's really different here because they still have some young kids that are into sports, which
Yeah.
means things have to be done early in the morning to do some
Yeah.
practice like runs and things like that.
Yeah.
Because you get to 8 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, it starts to bake.
Right.
And so it's a dangerous level. So it's just like, yeah, this is, she's like, wow, it's really, really different here. But I mean, there's like everything else in the country. There's places that there's good and bad about it. There's always pros and
Yeah.
cons, right?
It's pretty good, pretty sweet there, January, February.
Yeah,
Beats
yeah,
the
it's
heck
pretty
out of
good.
here.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking, I was like, should we return in February? And hotel rates are about 50% higher because it's still kind of in season versus
Yeah.
now it's a little cheaper, not that much cheaper. I mean, it's cheaper, but that's the other thing about post pandemic is that the hotels that used to be relatively inexpensive, they cost a lot more to stay in now.
See, this summer, it seemed like the hotels, like, in the summer, I ended up getting a lot of hotels over the
Yeah.
course of it, um, were cheaper than last
I,
year.
th- I think it depends upon where you go too. I
I
mean,
was on most of it East Coast, a
yeah,
little bit down south, but most of it
yeah.
East Coast.
I think it just depends. I thought we did pretty well where we were, and I wouldn't mind staying. There was a Spring Hill Suites in what's called Chandler, and it's
Mhm.
very close to where my sister-in-law lives in Mesa. Uh, but I thought it was reasonable, and it's close to a lot of things. In
Yeah.
particular, in the shopping center next door, across the street, is a Hobby Lobby, which is like a magnet for my wife. And I'm thinking like, maybe I shouldn't go there anymore.
I hear you.
There's a lot of fabric in this house right now that I'm not sure she'll ever use. But if she watches this show, I'm sure I'm going to hear about it later. All right, enough on the weather and everything like that. Hopefully, our thoughts and prayers go out to those that have been affected by this. I hope everybody turns out to be, the remaining people turn out to be okay, and they can get reconnected with their loved ones. It's been a major disaster for the country there down there. So we have increasing tensions, in Israel. They're, Iran lobbed 180 plus missiles into Israel. So yeah, these everybody wants peace, right? These other guys want peace, and they're lobbing missiles. They're doing everything but show that they want peace. They want a settlement at all, and I think it only, in the bottom line, I think it only strengthens Israel to say, look, we got to go after them. We can't stand here and just let them do this. This is a reason why we've taken a tough stance.
Right. They're in a, Israel's attitude is, we're never going to get a better chance to wipe this out. Yeah, most of the world opinion's against them, and I guess the ICC voted some kind of sanctions on them, and the UN and our weak, scandalously terrible administration did not veto it as it should have. So yeah, they're condemning them. But here's the thing about it: Israel's waist deep in it now, right? They're in a regional war. It should have been prevented. Again, our leadership was not up to the task. They are. It can't really get a lot worse on them, public opinion wise, right, than it is right now. So they're like, finish the job, wipe out the enemy completely, so that 5 years from now, you don't have to do this again. right? Decapitate all of it, make all of it dysfunctional or unfunctional, right? To the extent you can, right? Um, get rid of the infrastructure, hurt the infrastructure, decapitate the leadership. They killed Nasrallah last week, which was that's a guy who's been a huge thorn in their side for decades. Um, and finish the job, prosecute the war, do everything you can do now, because this is your chance, right? You're already taking whatever punishment you're going to take for it in world opinion or whatever. It's not, they're not going to stop. It's not going to get any worse because you keep going, right? You're sort of filled that box. So, this is their chance to rid themselves of this problem. And they're being very aggressive about how they're doing it because they're, time's working against them. They need to finish quickly, right? And so that's what they're doing. They're pedal to the metal to finish this and wipe out the forces against them now. Now, the truth of the matter is, the reality is, the force against them really is Iran, right? The Arabs have kind of made their peace with the concept that there's going to be an Israel, right? You saw that during the Trump administration when they were making flights from, Riyadh to Tel Aviv and so forth. The Saudis are okay with this, and the Oman, the Gulf state people are okay with this. The Arab world is okay with it, right? They're going to get in line behind it. So the Arab world was fine with this. What they weren't fine with, who's not fine with it is Iran, right? Iran still wants to agitate and make problems, right? So Iran has instigated Hamas, paid for October 7th, instigated Hezbollah, fomented and funded the attacks from Lebanon. And now those people, Lebanon and the people in Gaza, are dealing with what happened from the situation that the Iranians put them in. So, I think the thing about it is that the good American leadership would, again, turn the public opinion against Iran, right? This is not a one or the other thing. Iran is the problem, not Israel, not the Arabs. It's Iran. And of course, the Biden administration comes in and rewards Iran, gives them all the money they need, and backs them as they do this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's our administration is not doing a lot on this, right? I mean, they keep trying to go on this two-state solution path. They keep trying to find a way they want Israel to back off. It's like, look, Israel's under attack. It's October 2nd. We are 5 days away from the 1-year anniversary of when they got first attacked. It's like, has this not sunk into people that, that Israel is not the aggressor here? They were the victim of this, and that, they have every single right to go and fight, to preserve their country and their freedom. And, they've been getting attacked by Iran and, and Hezbollah and Hamas and, all these combinations. This whole thing about, what was it? They wiped out seven Hezbollah leaders here in the last week or so. You mentioned Nasrallah. That was extremely damaging to Hezbollah. I mean, they've got Hezbollah really kind of pinned back, on a lot of things there. They start taking out a lot of these top key people. But you're right too. It's like this is, they have to keep amping it up. They got to end this quickly and just keep doing this. And I think that's what we're seeing from Netanyahu and Israel, is that they have every plan, to basically say, we're going to retaliate. We're going to strike back for everything that's going on here. And, kind of like we're still seeing some campus protests here. But it doesn't seem to be, I guess because the election is not as big a headline feature as it was before. Plus,
and I'm sure the Democrats are telling them to stifle themselves.
Right, exactly. That was my other thing here. Is just like they probably put the word out saying like, can you do this quietly?
Yeah, do it on the down low.
Yeah, because that attracts attention, and that forces us to talk about the issue where we're horrible at.
Yeah. The other thing that's happening is like the Muslims are starting to pick up on the fact that they're kind of brought up when convenient, right, by the Democrats. And so like you see, these Muslim groups in Michigan are starting to endorse Trump, right? Because they're saying, like he at least means what he says, right? He's at least not lying to us. So, and I think they think that they can work with him, and they can work with him, right? Trump's thing is legal immigration, not illegal immigration. And so, and a lot of those guys they have credentials, and they're the people who are, he's talking about stapling green cards to the diplomas. Those are the people earning the diplomas too, right? So, or in a lot of cases. So, that they think they can play ball with Trump. And, in Michigan, that's a crucial group, right? To have the influence of. Mayor of the largest Muslim majority city in the country endorsed Trump in the last week.
Yeah, Trump's relationship with people is kind of funny and fascinating.
It's fascinating, like all the friends he makes,
Well, so he's got he's got the backing of Elon, right? I mean, Elon is like all in, right? Big time all in, and has attracted other people to join him and go all in on this. And yet, you have Trump on record about talking about previous about EVs being for the elites, right? But he also has said, that to the auto workers, that they take away, and I take away your jobs, and I'm going to, I'm going to fight for your jobs and things like that. But he's also said nice things about EVs too. I mean,
right. And I think Trump and Elon both realize that EV business, including Tesla, would be better off if it was not backed by government mandates. Right. Yeah. I think the production can be at the right levels. It can, what the Biden administration is trying to do is, have an abrupt change to all electric vehicles. Right. And it's only 11 years away now. They have 11 years to drop everything we're doing in the car business and completely change under them. Right. So, and I think Elon realizes that, that's going to mean a lot of substandard cars get on the market, right? EVs themselves are going to take a bad name because they're going to have to be rushed to market to meet these mandates. I think he realizes that, the mandates don't really protect his industry. And he trusts himself to be innovative enough to succeed in whatever the rules are.
Yeah. So you look at the car industry. Okay, yeah. And these mandates they've altered the landscape, but it's artificial, right? It's artificial. Right. All these rules, all these kind of mandates, these things that the Biden administration wanted to, in California, you've got to have 50% of the cars, by 2030. And I think in California, maybe it was 100% by 2035 or later. It's like, unrealistic things. So it forces their automakers to jump all in on this. Now, if you look at it under Trump, it was still somewhat of a nascent industry, and Elon had most of it to himself. But it was fine. I mean, Elon, he survived. He made his money selling EVs, but he could sell EVs because the government said, we're going to give you a $7,500 credit for buying an EV. Give me that incentive. Now there's incentives out the wazoo. They've altered the incentive thing, to all kinds of things. And so, all the automakers have, they've been jumping in because they want to meet the deadlines. But what's happened? They can't make money, selling EVs. So wouldn't it be?
Elon wasn't really alone with it. He was sharing it with the major automakers, right? There was the Chevy Volt, and
they had a few. Ford had a line of. Elon was dominating, I think.
Yeah, he was dominating, but the major U.S. automakers were trying to see what they could do to get into the business, right? And so they're diverting resources from profitable endeavors to non-profitable ones because of government mandates. And that's not working for them. They're backing. They're just telling the government, we're not going to do it. You're not going to have any place to get all these EVs that you need. I think a lot of the people behind the EV laws don't care that we don't have enough cars, right? They're just assuming none of us have a car. So that's where this is headed. And I think that that's one of the things you can look for Trump to end on day one is the EV mandate.
Yeah, I think that's got to go. The auto industry would have been better off just kind of going along at their own pace and let
Right.
let the natural order of things take place. If they were building, if GM and Ford and Stellantis, Volkswagen, all these guys, if they were going to build EVs that people wanted, and like, Kia, Hyundai, things like that, and they somebody chose a Kia or GM, or Ford, a Mustang over, a Tesla Y or, Model 3 or whatever, fine. And if they qualified for the subsidy, fine. The tax credit, fine. But the government made this an artificial market, and so when they all went in there, they spent a tremendous amount of money, trying to produce all these vehicles, and then they were losing thousands and thousands of dollars per vehicle. I mean, I was reading an article the other day in a journal about a dealer. Okay, and this is the kind of the last transaction, right? The automakers send the cars to the dealers. The dealers then sell the cars, but the dealers are buying the cars from the automakers for XYZ price and whatever other kickbacks and incentives and things like that. And so, but this dealer was saying, like, every EV he sells, he loses. The dealer loses $1,000. It's like, why? The dealer can't afford to lose $1,000 a car. Okay,
Right.
And
that's
and
not
so
what they're in business to do.
no, they generally don't have the same kind of resources as the automakers.
Right.
And so if they're forced to sell cars and they're still going to lose $1,000 or so a car, the dealers will then disappear. I mean, you start to lose the market. I mean, we already went through that whole, shenanigans, when we had all those auto dealers close, we saved GM, all that auto bailout, kind of really screwed up the market there, all of those things. It's almost like, we're going to repeat the same mistakes again because
Yeah.
of the stupid EV stuff. Here's John. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, right. And it's distorted the market. I mean, COVID had something to do with the supply chain, but we're out of COVID. Supply chain seems to be, has seemed to mostly recover, but now auto prices are still way up here for reasons that, well, I mean, I think I'm going to blame Biden for that. Just being so pro-union, he's allowed the unions to run roughshod over everybody, and their costs have gone up, on the labor side, which is not helping matters at all. And so you've got the situation that I don't know how they're going to resolve it unless Trump wins office, because it's surely not Biden administration has done nothing but let the unions, rule, right?
Right.
The unions, they need a fair shake. The automakers need to share their profits with the workers, but the workers aren't even demanding now that inflation has slowed down, they're not even demanding a reduced level, something reasonable. They're trying to say, okay, well, we kind of fell behind before, so now we want X amount here, which is going to be well above inflation, and it'll just push up costs even more, even though a lot of these companies have been trying to increase wages along the way, right?
Right.
So it's all these factors are going in there, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this goes. But
it'll be fixed pretty quickly if Trump wins.
Right. I think that
looks like he should win.
I think that's it. I mean, you saw that picture I posted last week on Facebook when I was in a cyber truck, and I'd watched Tucker Carlson put a cyber truck through the motions up in Maine with some people, which was quite interesting because it was a chance to kind of see it do a lot of different things. And so I'm sitting in the car, and the owner goes, he says, now press this button. He says, press over here on the screen and then hit high. And so what that does is, it raised the Cybertruck up, right? What I forgot to do, or he forgot to remind me to do, is to hit it so that it would go back to its regular height. Because when I got out of the car, I just about stumbled. I'm lucky I didn't fall on my face on the pavement, because it was, I was not thinking, and I'm like, now the truck is X amount of inches higher, and I'm like, wait a minute here.
Wow, long way down there.
And people had asked on Facebook about, like,
you okay down there, Don?
Yeah, why is it a truck? And it's because it has a truck bed that is you cover. You know, you don't see the
Yeah.
truck bed, but you press a button, and it's like a slide door. It goes, and there's a truck bed, and it's like, you know, it's kind of ingenious in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. I mean, I would be hard pressed to drive one that's a car that's something that's 80 to $120,000. And as my friend said, he says, yeah, a couple of issues are one, you can't really park it in a garage because it's so huge, and two, that finish, that kind of stainless steel finish, it kind of gets if you put like these. He likes to put like flag magnets or whatever campaign magnets on there. He's very involved in the local Republican politics stuff. He does a lot. He runs it through parades and stuff. He says, if you leave it on there and it rains, he says a lot of times it gets kind of a little rust kind of things. He says it's a real pain to clean, and that's why people wrap their cyber trucks. If you see a wrapped cyber truck, it's just like people like, I don't want to clean this stinking thing. I'll just
Yeah.
wrap it.
I hear you.
But once again, Elon design, it's just this kind of cool factor. I will give him credit.
Lives around the corner. He's a smart guy. He really is.
It really is. Okay, next up, vice presidential debate. Now, I didn't go into this thinking that this VP debate was going to move the needle or anything like that. Tim Walz tried to lower expectations, saying that he wasn't a good debater. He lived up to that, or maybe he went below that bar. I don't know. It was not his finest moment on the stage. And JD Vance did pretty good.
I thought Vance was good. I thought Walz was better than Harris. Right, he did have some grasp of policy. I think that I kept wondering, what is she thinking watching this? Vance keeps talking about this detailed policy things he wants to do, and Walz is over there nodding along. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. It's like, shut up. But Vance knows how to talk about this. When people forget, we've talked about it on here before. Vance, when he was chosen, people were like, oh, such and such could have helped him carry such and such a state. Why didn't he get this guy, that guy, the other guy? He got Vance because Vance is the most effective person he could find at communicating Trumpism, right? Like, what are we talking about here? What is it that we want to do with these policies? And in many cases, he's better at explaining it than Trump. And that's a lot of what happened last night. Is he went through, they tried to paint him as abortion extremist. And Vance patiently took them through the argument of like, who's the real extremist here, right? That you come away thinking like, it's one thing, the exceptions for rape, incest, or life of the mother. It's another thing, to kill babies that were born because your plans to abort them didn't quite work out, right? And he was able to show that this does happen, and that indeed Walz does approve of it. And then, on the, how child care should work and so forth like that, Vance had better answers, and Walz agreed that Vance had better answers, right? And they're, as one of my friends pointed out, they're both talking about spending a lot of public money, right? They're talking about spending public money to solve private problems. Like child care is a private problem. Whatever you say what you want about it, but it ain't the government's problem how your kids get taken care of, right? It's your problem. So we can all agree that, hey, we're going to spend money and let government help solve it, if we want, but it's remains a personal problem. So, I don't know. A lot of, if you're a small government conservative, you probably did not hear a lot you liked on either side last night, but you probably did come away thinking that the vice presidents are better, sharper at arguing the cases than the president candidates on both sides.
Yeah, I think Vance dispelled a lot of notions about who he is and things like that. I mean, the weird claim and things like that, and other things that he may have said before. He was pretty much on target, on message last night. He
did a good job handling the other views too.
Right.
I see what you're saying there, and some of that I don't necessarily disagree with, but so you're not just savaging people all the time. You're actually thinking about what just got said, right? And because people hear these things in a debate, and they're like, why wouldn't we do that? Because you're not thinking about the other side, and they're not steeped in policy, stuff arguments like we are. right? For probably for the benefit of their mental health. But we're, Vance is able to walk people through this stuff and explain different ways of doing it, and explain where Trump's approach comes from.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Vance, in some cases, was brutally honest. I mean, his mention about abortion, about how the GOP has not done a good job on this. The trust, they haven't earned the trust. I mean, this is true. This has been since Roe v. Wade collapsed. Basically, this has been a problem for the GOP to really define who and what they are on this issue. We've been trying to talk about this is a states' rights thing, and it gets muddled with a lot of other things, gets mixed up with this national abortion ban, which Trump has now said, there's no way I'm going to sign one. And that really is kind of the policy, I think, that real Republicans, real conservatives should be saying. It's like, look, this is a state issue. This is not this is something that, we don't need a national ban. Keep the government out of this, keep the national government, federal government out of this, and let the voters decide how they want to handle this issue. And it may not make a lot of pro-life people happy, but I'm glad that he kind of put that out there.
It's also right. It's also a lot of the people that joined our fight to overthrow Roe, right, did so because the federalism arguments, right? That's what they weren't there out of saving lives. They were there out of federal government should not be telling states how to handle this issue, right? There's no reason for this to be a federal issue. Okay, so we're going to say, thanks for your support, but we weren't really fighting for what you're fighting for. For 51 years, that's what we sought. We sought get it out of the federal government, get it out of having a federally enunciated right to abortion, found in a penumbra of whatever it was. You remember, I can't remember what that phrase was, but it was like, it wasn't in the Constitution. There was nowhere in the Constitution that said you had a right to abortion or a right to privacy from which stemmed the right to abortion, right? And that's the other thing that they turn around is the right to privacy also was used to make it, outlaw laws against contraception, outlaw laws against homosexual marriage, and so forth, right? So when Justice Thomas and others rightfully point out, everything that's based on a right to privacy is on murky legal ground. They're all like, he's going to take away your stuff, your rights. It's like, he's not taking away your rights, but he's telling you, you need legislation to back up what you're doing, because, relying on court rulings is not good, because we've already told you, there is no right to privacy. That stuff was made up.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm disappointed personally every time I see a state basically, codify abortion into their state constitution and things like that. But this is how it, this is their right. I mean, if the voters went to the polls, the voters voted and they say that's what they want, then that's what it gets. Now, if there's a method to overturn that later or whatever, and they do that, that's fine. But it's within that state, and let the people residing in that state make the decision. And if you're residing in that state and you're not happy, well, look at who voted, or how many people voted. A lot of times it'll be where the voter turnout was not as high as maybe it could have been. Maybe your side didn't get the vote out.
Right.
There's so many factors.
Win hearts and minds. You're going to have to win hearts and minds. You got a pretty winnable case, but you're going to have to make it.
Yeah, and I think the Democrats, when the abortion issue energized a lot of Democrats, and it didn't energize as many Republicans on this, and they thought this was, with Roe v. Wade, the fight was really over, but this is just the beginning of a different kind of fight that you basically have 50 fights,
right, which should redound to our benefit, but
right.
The people who've run the political movement of pro-life have been not good at it for a long time.
Right. Yeah. That's right. I mean,
squandered a lot of easy victories.
Right. And I think if they did a scorecard of this, that's what you have to look at. It's like, how is the national pro-life leadership done? Look at how this is going on here, and it's not good.
It's not good. Yeah, they could have made a lot of choices that made this go a lot better than it has.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the blame goes on them, for this.
But
Some
yeah,
of
some
them,
does.
right. So for this, so there are a lot of factors that are in this, but walls. I don't know. I mean, there's this. I was listening to 538 Politics podcast, and they were just doing their analysis, and they said, I don't know who did the count. Walls mentioned Minnesota 25 times last night. So that they'll probably never hear again.
Yeah. The high water mark for Minnesota
Yeah, the
mentions.
high water mark for Minnesota. But going back to something earlier too, it's like there was a time, I think, when popular opinion said that you select your running mate looking for a way for that running mate to help you in a specific state or group of states. And I think we've gotten away from that, because I mean, you don't pick Tim Walz to win Minnesota, necessarily, because Minnesota was likely going to go Democrat. I mean, it's
right. But I think that in the case of Walz, the case that got made was, whether it's right or not, is that he would also help you in Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, maybe.
Yeah.
The whole blue wall thing. But yeah, your point's correct.
Yeah. So
we've kind of gotten away with that, especially in the case of Vance.
Yeah.
Right. He was, I don't know, because the Democrats passed on Shapiro, which would have helped them in Pennsylvania for Walz. Democrats, I mean, Republicans passed on a lot of people to get a guy from a state that Trump is almost certainly going to win, was almost certainly going to win beforehand. Right. But what Vance brings to it is he can really explain Trumpism. He really makes the arguments well. That's what came through last night.
Right. And I think when I look at, I've scanned through some of the analysis, from, what I've seen was just that there are a lot of people in the media, not on the Trump side. They're kind of like, what is it? Lindsay Davis, she was like, Walz's performance was, kind of reminded, it was kind of like Biden's performance, right? Others in the media were very disappointed at Walz's performance, and some had to begrudgingly admit that Vance explained what MAGA Trumpism is better than Trump did on many occasions, on many issues. And that's what we need, because Trump often gets lost with personal attacks. He goes down these personal attack things, and he loses sight of the bigger issues, which are things that can win over. So Trump is Trump, and he's always going to be Trump. If Vance actually winds up being the guy to elucidate the Trump message on issues, then that's great. That's fine, because they can go out there together, and they can have, Vance can go out there and talk about, Vance can talk about the economy, the border, and stuff like that. Trump can feed into that with some of the other things, but Vance, and Vance didn't bring up, pets being eaten, so we don't have to have that controversy going on, and stuff like that. And the Harris administration, as such, or Biden Harris, they still don't really have a great answer on immigration. They don't have a great answer for the economy. I think didn't Vance say last night, in response to something Wall said, says, well, Harris, they've been in office for 3.5 years. What have they done, right?
Right.
That's also
a real effective argument.
It is an extremely effective argument. Just keep throwing that back in their face. They keep trying to avoid it, but keep using that. Those are the things that you can remind voters, of what's going on here. Now, once again, as we've said on this program, so we're down to 33 days. I haven't filled in my mail-in ballot. I haven't gone around to do anything yet. So I haven't voted in Maryland, but others around the country have. Actually, it'll be kind of interesting. I don't even know what's going to happen, down south, right? I mean, how is voting going to be affected in some of those areas, that got hit? That
North Carolina, it's really interesting because Asheville is a deeply blue city,
right.
Of course.
Right. Yeah.
But the surrounding area is deeply red. One of the reddest parts of the country. So, that's kind of it'll be interesting to see like how that comes out. Early voting trends. Registration is going very good for Republicans, especially in the states that matter: Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan. Request for ballots is really down for Democrats. They're still ahead of us, right? But the lead has been cut significantly. In Virginia, there's 11 congressional districts. If you rank the congressional districts by early ballot requests, 3 of the bottom 4 are 8, 11, and 10, which are the 3 that are basically Northern Virginia. 8 is like Alexandria, Arlington, McLean, Don Byers, the congressman. 11 is most of Fairfax, and 10 and a little bit of Prince William, and 10 is the rest of Fairfax and Loudoun. So, the blue belt across the top of Northern Virginia, the Democrats are not turning out for early voting. And if they don't bank those early voting advantages, right, then they'll be in trouble on election night, because election night comes in, all those people down south, downstate, and out in southwestern Virginia and so forth. Some of those counties will be 80% or more for Trump. So, you better get it in early.
Yeah. So I've been following Real Clear Politics, and to me it seems that what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing a lot more. It's all within. It's still a very close race, but margin of error on the polling. But I'm seeing a lot more movement towards Trump on the polls that they're reporting on. So they have Washington Post, North Carolina, they've got Trump up 50-48. Emerson's got Trump up 49-48. Quinnipiac has got Trump up 49-48.
That's 3 left-leaning pollsters.
Right.
That's come out pro-left.
Yeah. So you've got this is what that's what to me is amazing. Atlas Intel, Pennsylvania, 51-48. I tried to look them up. I guess there's something out of Brazil originally.
Atlas, they were the most accurate pollster in the United States in the 2020 cycle.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you see this, and then they do their compilation, and they just have Electoral College, Trump in Pennsylvania, plus 0.1, North Carolina, Trump plus 0.7, Georgia, Trump 1.5, Trump in Arizona 2.1, Wisconsin, Harris 0.4, Michigan, Harris 1.4, Nevada, Harris 1.1. But we're just seeing, how close this is. But it seems that there's really the moment. If there is any momentum, I think it's actually swinging to Trump. If you're looking at polls, and polls are difficult because it's that snapshot in time and everything like that. The real thing that we're going to wait and see is the voting and how it breaks out among the states. And we're looking at the Electoral College, and I still think deep in my heart that Trump's got an advantage there when push comes to shove. And
I think you can kind of see in some of the reaction to this debate that the Democrats see the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's a hard hit. It's like, no, these things aren't happening. You can see that they spotted the problem, and this was a last chance to, land a haymaker and get the momentum back on their side. And they know that, whatever you think of who won or lost yesterday, it's definitely not the case that the Democrats got a lot of momentum out of it.
Right. And if you look at it, if you look at the VP debates, from the point of view of like, this person could be the next president. Should something, should the president, be, have to vacate office, die in office or whatever, or serve, with the president and then become kind of the natural, next nominee. And then it's like, so if you look at that and you're like, okay, so who looks more presidential at this point and can handle that? It certainly wasn't Tim Walz overall stumbling and trying to figure out. And and I think Vance just threw him off. And of course, so he didn't have, he didn't have good explanations about things, and kind of stumbled his way into being friends of school shooters, and saying that he has been a knucklehead. And it's like, I don't think you want to say the word knucklehead. Describe yourself as a knucklehead, type of thing like that. It's like,
we're a heartbeat from the presidency. Yeah. The heartbeat from the presidency guy. We're hoping it's
you and I can call him a knucklehead. You should not describe yourself as a knucklehead, in my opinion. All right, we're winding up here. But and the other thing too is Polymarket. It's got them pretty even. Polymarket is always interesting, and because if you watch it, it change. Because it's a betting market, it changes.
Right.
Harris has had some advantage, but that advantage has been slipping. It's just kind of an interesting kind of thing like this. So it's about 50-50. It'll vary. I mean, maybe 50-49 either way. But it's an extremely tight race on the betting markets. And I guess I tend to think that with polling, there are a lot of people who are not going to tell the pollsters that they're voting for Trump, and they will vote for Trump in the end.
Well, there's people out there now saying that they think there's some people who won't tell them they're voting for Kamala.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really know. The point that I keep coming back to on that, though, is polls are what people say they're going to do. Voter registration and early voting requests is what they're going to do, right? It's actually taking action. And those numbers are both really positively Trump, really.
And you've got to separate the likely voters, the registered voters, all kinds of things. There's so many different types of polls out there in terms of what group of people that they actually polled. And polling is going to, polling in parts of, North Carolina and stuff like that, that's going to be hard because a lot of this is done by cell phone and things like that, communication that they don't have. There's going to be some interesting things going on there that they're going to lose some insight there in those areas that got hit by Helene as well.
Right.
All right, I think that's enough. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, Brian.
Let's see. Pete Rose died. A great baseball player. First baseball game I ever went to. Astros were ahead 3-2 in the 8th inning, and Pete Rose got a 2-run, 2-out single to win 4-3 for the Reds. So I always hated him. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, he was always a great player on rival teams. He was also a rival to us on the 1980 Phils. The Phillies hadn't won a World Series in more than 100 years, and he went there and won a World Series. Controversial, of course, he got caught betting. I think baseball, people argue about this. I think baseball did the right thing to never let him back in because especially now that they have, FanDuel at your seat and all this kind of stuff, the people need to know that the players and the managers don't have a betting stake in the outcome. Because if they do, if they're all going to nod and wink and let one team win, I'm not going to go watch that, right? I'm not going to go watch fixed games. So it will kill that sport if gambling is allowed to look like gambling has influence on it. And I do admire baseball for standing up to him, standing up on that and not ever letting him in.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, and I think we're already seeing now, a lot of debate about Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame now that he's passed, and should they go ahead and do this? The moral argument says no. I mean, but you do have the guy who had what, over 4,200 hits, Charlie Hustle. He was a great baseball player. So for us old timers, we'll remember him and everything like that. But maybe, I don't know, maybe at some point.
The thing about him was every time he hit the ball, he ran as hard as he could to first base. Yeah. Right. So if you're the shortstop, you're just going to lollygag it over there. I mean, you might make it, but you might not. So when it's him, you can't lollygag it. So you're hurrying a little bit. So you're more likely to make mistakes because of his hustle.
Yeah. Well, and even All-Star game, right? Ray Fosse.
Yeah. Blasted Ray Fosse to win an All-Star game.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I mean, but that Pete Rose was 110% baseball. I mean, that was it.
Right. That's right. And we're playing a game. We.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, I'll just add Jimmy Carter turned 100, which he wasn't expected to make it to. So, yeah, happy birthday to Jimmy Carter for that. That's not a lot of people necessarily get to 100. I certainly won't get there, I'm sure. So,
I won't.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you are, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again next week.